there's no freedom, the wise men said, let justice roll down, roll down. When the poor cry out for shelter and bread, let justice roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary, walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream. Hatred will never drive out hate. Let love roll down, roll down. Remember, our hearts can make us great. Let love roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary, walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream. When brutality threatens our daughters and sons, let peace roll down, roll down. May our voices ring out above the guns. Let peace roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary, walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream. When fists rise up to strike a blow, let songs roll down, roll down. May the poets remind us of what we know. Let songs roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary, walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream. Step by step and one by one, let justice roll down, roll down. They can kill the prophets, but the dream lives on. Let peace roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary, walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary, walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream. Let justice roll down, roll down. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And now Joseph.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joseph MacDonald Hepburn. It's a long name. And we are here to welcome you to this unique interfaith community dedicated to social justice. Now, you may be wondering if you are welcome. If you are interfaith, we are interfaith, so you are welcome. You're welcome, yes, if you are Jewish, if you are Muslim, if you're Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, atheist. Someone once told me they were a religious atheist. No matter, you are welcome. You are welcome if you just came in from a protest march, or you aren't able to attend protest marches right now, or you may be confused about what to do. You are welcome if you miss Pride Month activities, or if you are participating in some that is online. You are welcome if you don't have a job, if you never had a job, or if you don't want a job. You are welcome if you are a renter, a landlord, or both. We extend a special invitation to those who are single, married, divorced, gay, transgender, filthy rich, or dirty poor. We extend a special invitation to those who are just browsing, or just woke up, or even just got out of jail. We don't care if you're more religious than the Pope or haven't been in. Extend a special invitation to those who are over 70 but are not grown up yet, to teenagers who are growing up too fast. We invite soccer moms, tree huggers, latte sippers, junk food eaters, oh, you name it, we are here for you. We invite those who are in recovery or still addicted. We invite you if you're having problems or you're down in the dumps, especially these days of so many violent, tragic activities. We are all down in the dumps in a sense. So we offer a special invitation to those who work too hard, those who don't work, those who can't spell, or because they are bored with staying home all day and heard that this is a strange church. We invite those who are inked or pierced or both. We offer a special invitation to those who could use a prayer right now, or opposingly, may have had religion shoved down your throat as a kid. We invite tourists, seekers and doubters, bleeding hearts. Oh, we can go on and on this morning. Welcome to the church in Ocean Park. Welcome. Now we are going to center ourselves as well. We usually have a singing of the Thich Nhat Hanh. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. We sing it 3 times. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. Let us sing. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Janet Gallery McKithen, and I'm the minister at the church in Ocean Park, and I also welcome you. I also want to acknowledge that no matter where you are this morning, you're sitting on land that was stolen violently from Native folks who were here, many of them who are still here. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge that we are also sitting on land that was has been built, a country that has been built on the back of people from Africa who were stolen from Africa. I also want to acknowledge that many of us come today with heavy hearts over and yet another mass shooting. And we know that a few years ago at our communitas, speaking of communitas, we did celebrate and honor a group called LASAC, which was a group of students who came together in response to a mass shooting at a school. And they have actually been working ever since. They brought together over 8 different high schools in the area, and every one of them had walked out of their school and walked to the city of Santa Monica, in front of the Santa Monica City Hall, and they held a rally. And these were kids that normally don't do that. At this time, they're also not only disappointed, but heartbroken, because they were sure that by this time we would have done something, and yet we have not. So I would like to take a moment and acknowledge all of those things. We're glad that you're here, because in community we can hold it all. We can celebrate and we can mourn and we can grieve and be frustrated all together. So welcome to the church in Ocean Park. Now it's my privilege to introduce Jim Lafferty. Jim Lafferty is the Executive Director Emeritus of the National Lawyers Guild in Los Angeles, the longtime host of the Lawyers Guild on KPFK, and a co-host of the public affairs radio show Law and Disorder, which airs in over 140 US markets. Jim is a longtime leader in the peace and social justice movements in America. Currently serves on the governing board of the ACLU of Southern California, Defense Committee, and is a fellow at the Institute for the Humanities at the University of Southern California. He's also a former honoree, Communitas honoree at the church in Ocean Park. Some of you know this and some of you don't, that in 2017, when the Committee for Racial Justice was trying to be disrupted, or these white supremacists were trying to disrupt the Committee for Racial Justice in that summertime, and they were building and building and coming back. They're going to be even stronger. We had word that there were going to be 300 of them, and so we were gathering to train for that. And Jim Lafferty was one of our trainers who trained us in how to defend ourselves and how to react and non-react to these folks. And we really, really appreciate it, because that was right the week before Communitas, when he was about to be honored. He took time out of that week and met with us so that we could be trained and ready for 300 white supremacists to descend on us. So we thank him very much from the bottom of our hearts for that. We will never, ever forget that. So welcome, Jim Lafferty. Oh, you're muted.
Oh, that's better. Thank you, Janet. Can you hear me now? Well, sisters and brothers and friends, it's delightful to be with you again. And is it a happier occasion than it was then, Janet? I don't know. It's, I think, clear for all of us with eyes to see and a heart to feel that we're living through a rather terrible period of both US and world history. First, there's the matter of the war. As we watch and worry if the war in the Ukraine is going to, spread to other nations, turn nuclear. As that's going on, we in at least 140 countries. And more devastating than that, to my mind, is that as we speak today, the United States is actually engaged in some form of warfare, some form of combat in over 150 countries in the world. And we now have, of course, a national military budget of $800 billion. Already, this war threatens the survival of goodness knows how many millions of people because of the interruption of being able to get various foodstuffs and nutrients to, well, what could be millions of people in the world, and that is a very real threat at the moment. Starvation is something that they fear they face. Indeed, when I think about the war, I can't help but feeling that over the tens of thousands of years up until now, we haven't really changed much. When I think of that caveman with that kind of primitive, our cavemen are wandering about with much more sophisticated and destructive weapons, but otherwise we haven't really advanced that much in terms of our war making. Here in the United States, of course, our people are more divided than they've been since the Civil War. And isn't it interesting that, of course, racism was a central feature of why the states had that Civil War. And once again, the racism of this country is at the heart of why the country is divided as it is. The Black Lives Matter movement, which brought over millions of people into the streets in hundreds of cities all over the country, which gave me and many people great hope. Those banners painted in the streets and what have you, much of that is gone. Far too little progress has been made on what Black Lives Matter has been fighting for in their brave and heroic way. Then I was reading Charles Blow the other day in the New York Times, and I identified with him. He said he's come to not expect too much from America. Well, I think we ought to expect more, but I understand what he means, or as James Baldwin put it, He said he had decided, and I quote, "It would be a wise desire not to be betrayed by too much hoping." So we've got to keep hope alive and yet to not be too despondent when it fails us. Nationalism and tribalism in the United States, of course, have advanced to such a degree that societal and differences once settled in peaceful disputes or at the ballot box on election day are now the excuse for violent confrontations and the passing of ever more Jim Crow laws. It's a tribalism between those, I think, who understand and welcome the demographic changes that have taken place in this country, and changing so-called traditional way of life in America. And hence the replacement theory. The replacement theory's emergence in the public debate. Ignorance and fear, driven really by, well, is evidenced by the fact that you've got nearly 40 million people still tuning into Q. Warnings of, democratic pedophilia and Jewish aliens, for God's sakes. Racist shootings like the one in Buffalo have become all too familiar and too repetitive. A majority of Republican Party voters, it's something like 78% the last I checked, still believe that in fact Trump won the election and not Biden the last presidential election. Super wealthy Americans now own a bigger share of the entire wealth of this nation than at any time, certainly in my lifetime or our lifetimes. And indeed, the US Census Bureau even acknowledges that something like 39 or 40% of us are only a paycheck away from homelessness. Christian white privilege still reigns supreme in these United States. I just want to say that, Joseph, I was quite taken back, and I would love to have a copy, actually, of what you read as to who was welcome here. I was quite moved by it and would love to have a copy of that, sir. But Christian white privilege in the rest of the country, I'm afraid, still reigns supreme. Racism, sexism, the fear of immigrants and people of other color, Jews and Muslims. It's reached levels really not seen since the days of our first Civil War. And that's why you've got so many historians and political commentators today warning that we are in great danger of having another civil war because of the deep tribal divisions of where we're at. Many historians today believe we are also in great danger, and they go hand in hand, of losing what remains of American democracy. And that in fact, the election laws that have been changed now in so many states, particularly in the South, but elsewhere as well. And if the November elections this year turn out as they are predicted to turn out, it's left many feeling that the 2024 presidential election is in great danger of being actually stolen this time. And with it, as I say, what is left of our democracy. Then, of course, there's the matter of climate change. When we're looking at what we've got to deal with, most assuredly, the biggest threat to life on Earth, Noam Chomsky says it's nuclear weapons and climate change, and I think he's right. Despite our now decades-long awareness of the problem, and in fact, some efforts to that every year now, we actually send more greenhouse and methane gases into the air than we did the year before, and then more than, you know what I'm saying? It's getting worse every year instead of better. And what's that about if we're doing something about it and know much more about it? The latest reports from the United Nations scientists that study this, as well as America's own leading climate scientists, believe that there are about a dozen or so tipping points beyond which sort of all is lost except the barbarism that will follow. And they claim that we've already passed 9 of those 12 tipping points. So that's a rather alarming wake-up call, isn't it? The Amazon rainforest in Brazil, which were considered the lungs of the world and used to actually absorb a quarter of those gases that we're putting up, not only is no longer doing that, it is itself a net contributor to the gases Well, I don't think that anything I've said so far has come as news, sad or otherwise, to this gathering. But I was asked to kind of comment on that, and nationalism, which is kind of lays over the whole thing. And so that brings us to the question, the age-old question, well, what is to be done? What is to be done? And the first thing I think to remember there is that things change. When you're in the middle of the kind of situation we're in now, I think it's hard to believe that anything will change, certainly for the better. But things change. Things can, well, they can get worse too, for that matter, but they can get better. And so the real question we ought to really be asking ourselves
Mom,
is,
why would I know where your purse is?
Shit.
anyway, where we are at this point is we should be asking the question, how do we make sure that there is? So what is the plan for that? How can we make those kinds of changes which will bring about an end to our warlike ways to the extent we can, the racism and the loss of democracy? I think, first of all, if we have any hope of doing that, we've got to first find a way to end that now fundamental tribalism that has left our country so divided. We've got to stop thinking of those who sharply disagree with us as simply being stupid or immoral racist or as the enemy. For truth be told, in some rather critical ways, I think, they are, like us, simply the product of an economic system and of an educational system, certainly, that has left most working men and working women in this country struggling to get all of their needs met. And they're being let down by the country that they thought was a different kind of country. Kind of ugly nationalism, if you will. They're scared to death about their place in this country. And so out of fear, they're easily aroused to racism, and Trump and others did a wonderful job of that, and to xenophobia in the face of what so many I feel are just a change they can't keep up with in their own mind. So we've got to do what the right wing has done, get involved, for example, in local school board elections so that we have some say about the curriculum, is what is being taught in our schools. We see what's happening in that regard. And then perhaps we can have the kind of school system that produces adults who can understand the real reasons for their plight in America. And there are many with a sincere, desperate plight in America. Learn how well they can do without being racist, and that the race of someone and that those who look different than them are not the cause. Well, to end this tribalism, of course, you got to start talking to these folks. You've got to get over the notion that they are so different from us, so hateful, so racist, so xenophobic, and what have you, that we have nothing to do but go and be at war with them. I don't believe that. And I found when I've had the opportunity to have those conversations, in fact, the differences between us are not as great as we think. Oh, in some cases they are. But for a great many, for the majority, I think, of those who are on the other side of this tribal divide, that is not the case. We've got to let them understand, I think, that the economic system in this country, which has to have winners and losers, uses that racism, uses the fear of the other to keep the country divided in the same way, really, that the slaveholders use that racism and what have you to keep the white workers in the South from organizing, from standing up to the oppression that they were feeling too, because at the very least they weren't slaves, you see, and so therefore they could be taken advantage of. One way to doing this, of course, is one reason I was so impressed with Joseph's welcoming, is that is for our churches and our unions to make it a point to reach out to some other union, which is known to be in the other side of that tribal divide, or a church where a lot of those folks might be on the other side of that tribal, or other places we're gathered, and begin to have those conversations and listen to one another and see what we can do about all this. Because I'm convinced that if we could really, listen to each other, and having listened, talk through some of our differences, I'm convinced we would find that we have far more in common, as I say, believe between us than we think exists presently. I think we'll find the other side has some grievances, and I say, and worries that are not unlike our own. They have simply looked to the wrong place for a solution to those grievances. And hopefully we can have some opportunity to educate in that regard. Only if we find a way really to breach the great divide between us can we eventually really defeat the inhumane, profit-driven, vulture, the corporate oligarchy that frankly runs this country today. And as I say, profits from that great division. Surely we have no time to lose. But remember this, as I say, we've overcome great historical evils in the past. The evil of slavery itself, the evil of children being sent into factories to work, the evil of the attacks on unions, the denial of women's rights, the Vietnam War, the communist witch hunts, and I could go on and on. But remember too, that history tells us that we won those battles at a time when many people often thought we could not win those battles. We did the hard work of finding a way to end out nationalism. That's tribalism. We can do that again. We can end the unjust system that promotes it, but it's only up to us, and no one's going to do it for us. It's threatening to destroy America itself. And when I come to places like the church in Ocean Park, I'm encouraged because I understand that there is, of course, that great, not just in this church, but that great wellspring of people all over this country who will be on our side in this battle and in this struggle for the different kind of world that we all see. So thank you.
And thank you so much, Jim. So much to talk about. And this is our time to share some thoughts with Jim and with each other, or ask a question. So this is community sharing, where you can raise your hand by going to the reaction button and push shared hands, or some people have it under participants, or if you're, it's a time for a brief comment or a question for Jim. We can start with Craig Ali.
I will preference it by something that happened this week and an observation. A little girl in a classroom called the authorities no less than 5 times, and yet there was not any action by the police. Clearly that demonstrates that brown lives in this capacity do not matter. We also have been in a position where we've made our concerns known to leadership, and there was a lack of, I guess you say, efficiently as they should be. Which brings me to my question, because we are about to go into another year where policy is about to be set, and nowhere, I think, is it more crucial than in a crisis that leadership is essential in addressing some of this. So I ask you, Jim, what is it then, as you've seen in your experiences, has been one of the most effective tools in seeing to it that, one, sound leadership in policy is pushed, as well as all of us are protected within this? That may be a legal thing, I don't know. So, I ask of you specifically, guidance for those that are be leaders, how we can more or less hold their feet to the fire to deliver something that they should be doing in the first place.
Well, yeah, I think that, if I may, I think that is the question after all, isn't it? In terms of not only what is to be done, but how are we going to do it, is the question now Craig is asking. And I think history is pretty clear on what the best answer is. Obviously, electoral politics plays a role, but my contention is that plays a secondary role into what really changes in this country. And I gave a couple of quick examples of that. if you think about Roe versus Wade coming into play in the first place, those 9 all-male justices who decided Roe v. Wade didn't simply wake up one morning and say to themselves, gee, have we been schmucks? I mean, have we been, racist and sexist and everything else? My God, of course a woman has a right to choose. For years before that, hundreds of thousands of women and their supporters took to the streets, went on hunger strikes, went to jail, sat in, elected candidates who were pro a woman's right to choose. And that's why those 9 guys who before had not thought there was a right to choose, thought there was a right to choose. And Roe comes about. Same thing with the civil rights movement or with the labor movement. I mean, yes, laws were finally put in place by elected legislative people, but only after people put their lives on the line in terms of organizing labor unions. The millions of people who took to the streets around the war in Vietnam. It was that, together with the victories of the Vietnamese on the battlefield. Yes, it finally ended because the Congress stopped paying for it and what have you. But they only stopped doing that once it was impossible to rule in this country, given because there are so many issues all at once kind of hitting the country. But I think that's the answer, Greg. I think we have to, and we've had some of that. The pandemic had made it very difficult. Nevertheless, Black Lives Matter still during that period of time. Yes, they did not win all of the victories that they wanted to win either, but there have been changes around the country and the laws having to do with police brutality and the way people police and so forth. So I'll stop there, but it's the organization in the streets in the broad sense of what in the streets means, of masses of people from all walks of life who finally have the power to force the government that might not otherwise want to do so to do what we think is right.
Thank you so much, Jim. Great answer. Rachel?
Good morning, everyone. First, I'd like to start off with the propaganda and brainwashing of our brothers and sisters is constant and relentless. And it is well organized and well funded. And to me, I don't know that we on this side of the aisle are going to be able to combat that. We are not as organized, we are not as well funded, and we do not necessarily want to partake in those kinds of tactics. But I'm starting to realize more and more that I think we need to partake in those kinds of tactics. We need to use their own playbook against them. Even still, though, we are behind in the game. These people are already entrenched. Just like James said, I've had the, and I don't block conservatives unless they're, name calling and things like that. If they want to come on my page and have a reasonable conversation about issues, then I'm all for that. And I have those conversations. But no matter what kind of argument I make, no matter how reasonable I am, I fail every single time to change their hearts and minds because they are so entrenched. We are losing this contest because the system has been rigged. It has been rigged. They've been working on this for the last 50, 60 years. And what we're seeing today is the culmination of this, whether it's through politics or through place, whether it's now a Supreme Court that has activist right-wing judges now making decisions for the whole country against what the majority of voters want. It is it is the rule of by a minority, which is the technical definition of fascism. Fascism is marching down the streets of America and down the main street of America, and we are doing nothing about it. I see nothing happening. And protests, yeah, they do to some degree have an effect, but the effect is too little and not strong enough. And I'm sorry, I really feel, I'm a pacifist. I don't believe in violence, but I really believe that that's where we're headed. That the only time that a nation or a peoples have changed things so dramatically in one direction or the other has been through violence. I hate to say it. It has been through violence, violent revolution. And the people that we are fighting against, the people who have been brainwashed and told that they have to stay in their tribes, they have been brainwashed and told that the way that they need to force change, because they are in the minority, is through violence. And that's why there are 400 million guns on the streets of America today. And I had made some other notes, but I'll leave it at that. But I'm just really very pessimistic about what, about being able to peacefully move forward in defending our democracy and our American way of life. We're about to lose it, folks.
Thank you, Rachel. I think that a lot of us are feeling pessimistic as well. Maybe Linda has something to share with us that will help us.
Well, everybody's got something to share. And I would say everybody's got, everybody's thinking about a whole lot of these questions. And I'm really grateful that I have a place to come and a community to share with. And but I think that I think what Jim talked about and what Rachel talked about and what Craig talked, what we're talking about today is like different ways. It's been on everybody's mind. So there's a couple of things that I wanted to say about this. And one is that I want to say that it's been, I would say that it's been rigged since 1787 at least. Actually, that's what I would say. That it's the game has been rigged since 1787 when the Constitution was adopted, and if you want to date. But I think more what I really wanted to say was I think a lot of us grew up in the 1950s. I mean, just look around. A lot of us are old enough to say that we grew up in the 1950s. Or hamstrung by an unwillingness to name the economic system under which we live. I mean, look, capital, hello, I think that it's more helpful to talk about capitalism than other euphemisms. And they are inhuman profit-based vultures. But if one individual capitalist bit the dust, the system is set up. The capitalist system is set up. And the only way capitalism survives is by some form of tribalism or other, right? And that predates 1787. You gotta look at Bacon's Rebellion for a minute, which I won't get into, but at East LA College, and unless we substitute race-based identification with class-based identification, unless we see force of change as the organized, multi-ethnic, multi-racial, if I can use a term that the class enemy invented in the first place, unless we can actually understand that this is a class struggle, then it is very hard to make sense of a basis of unity for all those people that the fascists are organizing. Those are our class siblings. Those are in the McDonald's and in the warehouses and in the Starbucks and working for Amazon. These are our class siblings. This is our class, right? And unless I think growing up in the 50s has robbed us of the tools of Marxist analysis that are necessary to understand the world we live in. And I was thinking about the Malcolm X quote where he said, I think there'll be a confrontation and it'll be between the oppressed and those that are doing the oppressing, and it will not be based on race. And they murdered Malcolm, and that Fred Hampton was moving towards that same thing, and they murdered Fred Hampton. Mm-hmm. And are the absolutely most powerful ideas and the only way out.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you.
I just very quickly before that, I agree with you completely. Absolutely. I consider myself a Marxist. I agree it's mainly a class struggle. I was speaking to somewhat different aspect of it. I think you're absolutely right. 100%. I agree with you.
Thank you. Teresa?
Yes, I have to say that I have not been so moved in a long time by such a powerful speech. And Jim, for all the years I've known you and known what you stand for and how well you present yourself, and know that you're always out in the streets doing everything that you talk about. I'm so moved this morning by your presentation. It makes me want to see you here every month and help. I think we need people like you, Jim. I know you've got your radio program and a million other things, but it would be so fantastic if you had a monthly audience and I could come to it so that I would be as encouraged and moved and educated as I was today. It was extraordinary, Jim. And I just can't tell you how much I appreciate it. It's just wonderful.
I want to second that. Thank you, Teresa. Hurley, Jim?
Yeah, I'll third that. Thanks, Jim, and thanks everybody who's spoken and contributed your thoughts and ideas. I, of course, have been very torn apart by the Uvalde mass shooting, and paying some attention to that, as well as all the other things that are going on. There's a lot to pay attention to, but one thing that that caught me, it's mainly people who come from generations of farm workers, and they know each other. Everybody in the town knows each other. And the thing that really caught me was they have this town square, town center, where the memorials for those killed in the mass shooting is taking place. And they are mourning the shooter as well. They know the shooter. Everybody knew him. It was like, what happened to him? And his grandmother, they talk about his grandmother who's got shot before he went to the school, and she's still in the hospital. And I think it's kind of stuff that Greg talked about at Communitas about they're not demonizing him. They're not demonizing the shooter. They're not throwing him away because of what he did. And I think that's, something that we need to keep holding on to, that nobody, the day is coming when nobody will be thrown away. And I think, the other thing is that I think about not really losing our democracy. We've never had it. We've never had a democracy in this country. It's been an oligarchy from the beginning. It's, 6% of, landed white males, I think was the beginning. By the people, for the people, of the people, by the people, for the people. We can take that, and that's our project. Actually, is to make democracy real. Make something that encompasses everybody and meets everybody's needs real. But we are still at this point, and I don't remember who said this, citizens of a nation that doesn't yet has yet to exist.
Mm. Thank you, Hurley Jim. We have two more, and then we'll call it a day after that. Joanne, and then Joseph. Joanne?
Yeah, I think that this oligarchy business and the fact that we've never been a democracy the way that people, most people vaguely think we are, I think we have to certainly be active, and we have to start raising the right issues. We have to learn how to message. The Republicans have always been better at messaging than we have been somehow. And I've been very hopeful. I just, the Committee for Racial Justice is just in the book group, started reading this book, Democracy in Chains. Mm-hmm. And I've only gotten through the introduction, the prologue and whatever. And I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, thank heavens somebody's going to help us here be able to message, because I don't think getting into debates with people who have had, as you say, 50 to 60 years of working on this and funded by the Koch brothers and so forth, I don't think you're going to get anywhere with the people who are into that ideology. I think we have to educate, re-educate people that are not thinking all the time. Have to educate people about what's going on and where the ideology really is on the other side, and what we want to be able to stand for when we stand for democracy.
Thank you. Joseph?
Yes, I just wanted to mention, James, that the welcome I did was not of my own making. The welcome really is what we do every Sunday. It was initiated by Reverend Janet, and we have that welcome every Sunday. Usually when I do it, I include some things new, but it's basically the same welcome we have.
You add a lot, Reverend Joseph.
Okay.
It's not yours, yes, thank you.
Yeah, but I don't know if I have anything to add to this conversation. I look at, and the main problem is one between law and grace. Not law and love, but law and grace. America is a very legalistic society, and I think that frustrates me a lot, because it frustrates the progress that we need to make a lot, because there is a passage, there is a bill there's a law for every single thing that comes up. And the law itself destroys itself. It's an impediment for progress. And so the whole problem is between law and grace. And if we can't focus on grace, I don't we are involved in.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Joseph. James?
And I just very, very briefly, I just to end maybe on a positive note, and I was reminded of it because of something Linda said, but and everybody probably already knows this, but I think it's good to remind ourselves of it in terms of where we're at, because it does seem so dismal these days. We've known for some time now that among people 19 to 28 or 29 years of age, they prefer a socialist economic system to a capitalist economic system. We now have had studies that show that those folks who consider themselves Democratic Party adherents, a majority of them now actually prefer a socialist economic system over a capitalist economic system. Life itself is what has, it isn't that somebody sat down in school and tried to explain this to people, right? People learn this the hard way. They come to the right decisions the hard way. And so I think if understand we have that base already of people who are with us in the sense of economic and social justice and what kind of a system would produce it, what kind wouldn't. We don't have to go necessarily marching down the streets with our communist flags, but I think we do have to talk. Well, I'm not ashamed of mine. I'm just saying, I think if we want to mobilize the greatest number of people, we already have that base. We can talk to them directly about, you know how this system is screwing you. This capitalist system is screwing you. Look what it's happening. That's why you're in the situation you're in. And yes, whoever it was that said it, the social media is being used by the right wing very effectively and by people with lots of money. Truth. And you've got to be, that's why organizing unions weren't easy. Organizing women's rights, organizing anything that's happened in this country didn't come about easily. Why did it become possible finally to build the kind of mass movement around Vietnam? You couldn't build it on day one. When we started marching against the war in Vietnam, there might have been 5 or 6 of us literally on a corner somewhere. Women's peace and freedom, and we're the first people out there walking the Fifth Avenue parade, whatever. And then as the facts on the ground began to educate, as people began to realize what Vietnam was really about, we were able to call on that and agitate and educate and organize around ending that war, which was itself a great blow to the imperialist and capitalist forces of the world at the time. And we can, it's been tough.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. I know I said there are only 2 more, but I'm going to go one last one. Teresa Von Payne.
Oh, thank you for allowing me. My heart is so full of gratitude that I wanted to say not only what I've already said about Jim's presentation, but everyone that I listened to today has been just so extraordinary and so much. It just makes me long for more and more often. And then I've got to get in there and do help a lot more. But every one of you inspired me so much this morning, and my heart is just full of gratitude. So
Me too. Thank you. Really.
Thank you so much, all of you.
Right. I think it's obvious that we need to do this again, Jim. I think it's obvious that we could go on for 2-3 more hours. So, and we barely touched the surface. I mean, there's so many aspects of what you spoke about and what we're going through right now. And there's so much need for hope and lack of hope, and a way to do it. What is the best way forward is not a thing you can talk about in 15 minutes. One last thing from Judy. Go ahead, Judy.
Well, I love the suggestion that we do this once a month. with Jim. I mean,
Well,
Okay,
I'd be happy. I want to say again, I'm going to be very fortunate to be out of the country for 2 months. But this is something in August and September. Whenever you want, and get other people to. This be something good to do.
so if
I'd
you're-
be thrilled to do it because if nothing else, it would remind this heathen to come to and be with you folks. And I feel so much better just having spent. I've got to go do something now, sadly, but I feel so better just having spent some time with. It's good because I spent a lot of time arguing with people that aren't in the same.
I think we all want you back, and there is Zoom in those other countries as well.
Oh yeah, that's
I'm
true.
sure that. So, and we're on Zoom most of the time. I mean, as you'll find out in announcements, we're going to have a once a month gathering outside. But other than that, we will be always we will be hybrid no matter what. So we will always continue online. So thank you so much. Our music director has a song for us now.
Oh, good.